The following contains major spoilers for Final Fantasy XIII. Please check the description for more information. Final Fantasy XIII, Episode 0, Promise. Part 5, Friends. Chapter 1. Calls in the evening always meant unpleasant things. Always, without exception. Having only lived for 14 years, it was probably a little early to be deciding that something had no exceptions at all. But it's true today, Hope thought, looking at his mother's back.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. We're having fun, just the two of us. Bodhum is a nice place. We've had no problems with the hotel, and the ocean is beautiful.
It was his father on the phone. Hope knew at the moment the phone rang, and he could guess why his father was calling. After all, it was evening. He could see from the windows beyond his mother's shoulder that the day was fading.
I see. I understand. That's too bad.
Bingo, Hope thought. He could tell from the way his mother's voice sank that he was right. They called him in to work. He was too busy, and he wouldn't be able to leave tomorrow. That's probably what he was saying. This was supposed to be a vacation for the three of them. 10 days at a beach resort, staying in a condo. His mother had planned it half a year in advance. Just to have fun and relax, not to see anything in particular. Or that's what she said.
Let's have fun, just the three of us. It's been such a long time.
But he knew the real meaning behind his mother's words. With her husband being so busy, and her son being at that difficult age, a teenager, they were growing farther and farther apart. She didn't know what to do. So she probably thought that if they were somewhere different, somewhere that wasn't home, that they would finally have time to talk. Or at least, that's what most people would think. Hope hadn't been looking forward to the vacation. He didn't know what he'd have to say to his father, seeing each other for 10 whole days. He had gotten irritated just thinking about it. So he had felt relieved when he heard his father had to go on a business trip. He said he would meet up with them later, but Hope didn't believe him. Probably at the last minute there would be a meeting he had to go to. He'd say someone important from the sanctum would be there, making excuses. It was always like that. No matter how small the promise, his father would always throw it away for his work.
It's okay, don't worry about it. We don't even have time to get bored. There's so much to do.
His mother forced her voice into a happier tone. Like always, he wanted to tell her that she didn't have to try so hard to be happy. Whenever his father would break his promises, she never blamed him for it. She always made up reasons and excuses.
Your father's work is hard, she would say. He has a lot of responsibilities. Important people in the sanctum trust him. He's working hard for everyone.
It was so sad how she would never say a word against him. But no matter how much effort she would put into defending him, his father never had a word of thanks for her. My father doesn't care, Hope thought, about how nice she is to him. Or about me. He couldn't be sure whether his mother really didn't realize this, or if she was just pretending that she didn't. It didn't matter either way. My father is the one who's wrong, Hope said to himself.
Tomorrow? We're going to Euride like we planned. Yes, they've already finished cleaning up after that accident.
There had been a huge accident at the energy plant in Euride Gorge 3 days ago. Everything had been shut down in the uproar, and tours of the plant had been put on hold until today. They had just finished rebuilding, and they had let them know just a moment ago that they would be letting in visitors tomorrow.
Everything will be fine. I mean, the Foul Sea decided that it was safe. That should be good enough for taking a field trip, right? You're such a worrier.
Like he would worry, Hope thought. Of course, he didn't say so aloud. He knew that it would just make his mother sad. His head knew it, but his heart. He's not coming, is he? Of course. The harsh words slipped out of his mouth just as she hung up the phone.
There's nothing he can do about it. There was that accident in Euride, you know. Everyone inside the sanctum was in a panic about it, and that affected your father's job too. Oh, but he said he'd be here in time for the fireworks festival.
Again with the promises he'll never keep. He should just not make them to begin with. Whatever, let's not talk about him. I mean, whether he's here or at home, he'd just say the same things anyway. How's school? Are you studying? Nothing else. He's like a voice recorder, Hope was going to say, but he saw the sadness in his mother's eyes. Oh yeah, you were saying you wanted me to help you with something? He said, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. He thought it was stupid to get all worked up about someone who isn't even here.
Oh yes, right. Would you wash these vegetables for me?
Vegetables?
Well, since we're staying in a condo that actually comes with a kitchen, it seems such a waste to keep eating out every day.
She took out a large paper package. It smelled of dirt, not the kind of smell you'd find in a grocery store. When did you have the chance to buy this stuff?
This morning, a local person gave them to me.
Oh yeah, Mom woke up early this morning, Hope thought. He had fallen asleep again and she'd gone out for a walk. That must have been when she bought them.
They told me these are ingredients they use in their cafe. There are some things they get from the market, but they tell me they grow their own vegetables. Here, watch these.
His mother separated the vegetables, giving Hope lumpy potato-looking things. His mother held some bug-eaten leaves. You would never find these in any grocery store in Palimpolim, or anywhere else.
You're always getting into the strangest things,
Hope said, sighing, and turned on the water. It wasn't like this was the first time his mother had done something like this.
But it was just so interesting. The field worker was a very fashionable, good-looking young man, you know. It's only when I learned that he worked at a cafe that it didn't seem odd. And then there was a shorter boy. I think he might have been a bit older than you.
It's still strange choosing to work in a field.
Really? They looked like they were having fun.
Someone who supports themselves. Hope couldn't really understand it. There were food production plants that were under the careful management of the Foul Sea, which produced large amounts of high-quality food that was sold cheaply. He didn't know how much vegetable seeds cost, but if they were anything like the flower seeds he had seen in garden supply stores, then it was possible that growing your own food wasn't any cheaper.
And then this girl came, and they started talking, and then he ended up just giving me the vegetables.
You're shameless.
Moms are tough.
She laughed and started washing the bug-eaten leaves. It was as if she had completely forgotten the phone call just a few minutes ago.
If only we had gone on vacation without him from the start, Hope thought. Then she wouldn't worry so much. We'd be able to just laugh like this. That's why I hate him. I hate calls in the evening.
He scrubbed hard at the dirt on the vegetables.
If only I could wash away everything else so easily, he thought.
Chapter 2. Euride Gorge was a very popular tourist spot. The energy plant there had a route set up for field trips and visitors, and it was said that the surrounding scenery was some of the most beautiful in all Cocoon. The fact that you could see Falsi Kujata, the Falsi in charge of the plant, didn't hurt either. The Falsi were important, supporting the people of Cocoon's way of life, but it was not often that regular people got to see them so close. That is why many of the people who visit the seaside city of Bodhum also take a trip out to Euride Gorge. You could see the latest equipment inside the plant, enjoy the beautiful scenery, and then see a Falsi. It was those three things together that made this place such a draw for visitors. Beside the plant there was a plaza with gift shops lined up, waiting for the tourists. Children on school field trips would meet there in groups, and you could always hear their excited voices. That's the Euride Gorge everyone knew. But today was different.
It's completely different from those videos, Hope murmured.
They had finally arrived in Euride. The plaza was closed off, with tape stretched across the entrance. Armored soldiers were on guard. There were no places selling food and drink, no places selling balloons.
It was a pretty big accident. I can't believe there are more soldiers here than tourists.
His mother seemed to be having fun, not bothered about any of it, but she couldn't hide her surprise at how heavily guarded the place was.
It must be hard for those soldiers from Bodhum, and they'll be busy with the fireworks festival soon too.
No, that's not their uniform, it's PSICOM's.
I think.
But those people over there are regular soldiers.
Really?
I think so. I saw it in a picture that Kai showed me once. Kai's dream was to become an airship pilot for the army when he grew up, so he knew a lot about it. If Kai were here, he would know each type of gun that the soldiers were carrying. Hope hadn't seen Kai for nearly 3 years. He had moved because of his parents' job. Even though it was just to the town next over, their school was different, so they hadn't really spoken much. At first they had called and mailed each other, but that grew gradually less and less.
Hey, isn't that the same pet shop we saw in Bodhum?
Hope stopped his train of thought to look at where his mother was pointing. The familiar logo was spread across the closed shutter in front of the store.
Isn't that the place that was selling those baby chocobos? Yes, that one. They had said that their store in Euride was all sold out. I can't believe all that happened here.
That was on the day they had arrived in Bodhum. After checking into their condo, his mother had said she wanted to look around the shopping mall. Who would have thought that an accident would happen in Euride? Some children ran past Hope. They must be on a field trip today, he thought. No, wait, all schools are on vacation right now, so there's probably just some sort of special event for children.
Hurry up! Look, we're already late!
There's a girl like that in every class, one who always tries to get everyone to obey the rules. There had been one in Hope's class. There was one now. It was probably impossible for one not to be in a class. Just like a cocoon without Foul Sea was impossible.
Then I went on that nature field trip. Oh, that one in Sunleth? Yes, that one.
He turned to the voice. The girl spoke with pride. She must be talking about the Sunleth nature observational field trip, Hope thought. The Sunleth waterscape is one of Cocoon's few nature preserves. Since it is maintained for ecological research, citizens are not usually allowed inside. The only time they are is when the Sanctum has observational trips. They have the trips several times a year, and mostly only let schools or other groups participate. The The ones who get to go are chosen by lottery, and even if you apply for a trip, you most likely won't be chosen. Only lucky kids get to go to Sunleth. It was no wonder that girl was boasting about it. Kai probably boasted about it at his new school, saying that he went on the nature field trip at his old school.
What's wrong, Hope?
His mother had walked a bit ahead of him. She stopped and looked back.
No, just these kids that passed by were talking about the Sunleth waterscape. I was thinking about it. Oh right, your school won the lottery on that, didn't they? Was that 5 years ago? 6.
When Kai was still there, and Alita. At the time, they were all in the 3rd grade. The 3 of them had always been together. At Sunleth, they had been together. He remembered running on the path behind them. He wondered if they still remembered the adventure they had there. Chapter 3. Inside the airship, everyone raised their voices in excitement. Below them, shards of light scattered across the surface of the lake, glittering. Everything was colored in various shades of green. They had just passed over the residential area of the Sunleth waterscape, which was next to the largest natural forest in all of Cocoon.
Is that Lake Serah? Hey, what's that big tree over there? Is that a mountain?
The voices of the children were so loud, it almost seemed they would break the windows of the airship.
All right, would everyone please be quiet?
Their teacher's voice echoed across theirs. After 10 years of doing this, the teacher didn't blink an eye. But the airship staff were looking annoyed at the children. This airship usually only took on passengers that could pay their high price, which means usually they would only see members of the sanctum on important business. Watching over children was out of their area of expertise. The nature preserve was in an area that could only be reached by a special access point, for which they hired the latest civilian vessels. The result was that the staff of the airship only had to deal with kids a couple times a year, and wasn't used to it. The airship gradually dropped altitude, and Lake Serah grew closer. The surface of the lake filled the view from the windows, and the children started talking excitedly again. Their teacher clapped her hands and raised her voice.
Pay attention!
And everyone quieted.
The airship will be landing soon. We will not be landing beside the lake, and there is only a temporary landing facility set up. Please take care not to run about. If you understand, please raise your hand. Okay, everyone said, raising their hands as one.
Hope heard a voice beside him say,
Oh, wow.
It was Kai. Hope kept his hand raised and asked him quietly,
What is it? It's really hard to land somewhere that doesn't have a landing strip. Oh? And this airship is huge. Only a specialist pilot could land this here.
Hope didn't really know what he was talking about. Kai wanted to be an army pilot when he grew up, so he knew all about that sort of thing, but Hope knew nothing. But if Kai said the pilot was amazing, it must be true.
What are you two talking about?
Alita said. She was standing beside Kai, leaning over him.
You're being loud.
Kai frowned at her. Alita was the best singer in the class, but she also had the loudest voice. They had met during the opening ceremonies when they had first entered elementary school. The teachers had sat them together. They sat together in class as well, and the 3 of them became close. They were always doing stuff together. Their interests, likes, and personalities were completely different, but sometimes an external closeness matters more than an internal one. They lived close by each other, and often went home from school together. Both Hope and Alita were the only children in their family, but Kai had a little brother who was 3 years younger. His name was Hal, and the 4 of them often played together. Year after year, they always ended up in the same class. Though they weren't always seated together, during trips and events like this one, they always got together.
He says the airship's pilot is really amazing.
Hope leaned on Alita to whisper in her ear.
Amazing? What is?
Alita tilted her head. Kai was about to give a detailed explanation when the teacher ran over.
Hey, you over there! Stop talking and lower your hands.
Only the 3 of them still had their hands raised in the air. They quickly dropped their hands in embarrassment, and everyone laughed.
It's all your fault, you know, Alita said,
pouting. That's when the scenery outside suddenly stopped. He hadn't even felt the slightest tremor as the ship landed. Hope didn't know anything about airships, but even he could tell that the pilot was good.
See? Pretty good, huh?
Kai said, as if he were the one who landed the ship. The first place the children looked at as they got off the airship was what was beneath their feet. Grass. They had never felt anything like it before. In Palimpolim there were streets everywhere. Even in parks, there were few places where the earth was exposed. They were surprised at the strange feeling underneath their feet, but when they got a good look around, they became more surprised at what they saw. Grass and trees weren't usual, but they were always in planters or surrounded by rocks. They had never really seen so many green things like they could here.
Alright, pay attention everyone. Does anyone remember the field trip rules we learned yesterday?
Everyone raised their hands.
Okay, then what are the 3 don'ts? Let's everyone say it together. Don't run. Don't play around. Don't push. Very good. It's different here than it is in the city. It's easy to slip, so you shouldn't run. The monsters here are usually quiet, but if you yell or make loud noises, it will surprise them and they might attack you. So let's be very quiet, okay?
They had gone over this several times since they found out they had been chosen to go. They all knew just telling people to be quiet probably wouldn't do anything, so they drummed it into their heads. Soldiers had already driven the most dangerous monsters away from the path they would be taking. The only ones left were the quietest and gentlest monsters, and even they were gently dissuaded from coming near the visitors. Doing this took a lot more time than simply killing all the monsters, but in Sunleth they were studying the monsters, so they couldn't kill them. Hope had heard about it from his father.
And there is one more important thing you must remember. There are a lot of ravines and cliffs here, and it is very dangerous. Today they have platforms and ropes set up for us, but only in certain areas. Never go outside of the observation area. These researchers will be guiding us, so please listen to everything they say. Everyone understand?
Everyone raised their hand, and Hope looked over to the path they would be taking. Through the dense trees, he could see steep, craggy cliffs and sharp rocks. He felt a bit nervous about walking in a place that was very dangerous. According to the plan, they would go from Lake Serah on through the rain-dappled trail and walk along the forest trail before coming back. Once they returned to the lakeside, they would eat lunch and have some free time. Hope thought that only people that wanted to walk on the path should have to. If they didn't want to, they should be able to stay there. The edge of Lake Serah was beautiful. Flowers of various colors grew all around. Close by, there were huge trees, and the shade beneath them looked cool and quiet. Hope preferred playing indoors than being outside. He liked playing games at home, or going over to Kai's house to look at pictures of army weapons and machinery. But since both Kai and Alita liked playing outdoors, they only played inside on rainy days, or when Hal was feeling too sick to go outside. Alright, now we'll be dividing you up by class. The path is narrow, so please form a single file line. Every class had a researcher to guide them, and like the teachers, the researchers were not used to raising their voices. They each carried a small megaphone with them. The line of children moved slowly along. At just a bit less than 100 people, the line was fairly long.
These flowers are so beautiful.
Alita reached her hand out to a pale red flower, but Hope stopped her.
You can't. It says we aren't supposed to touch or pick up any of the plants. They said there are even some that can give you a rash. I know that. I was just going to take a picture,
Alita said as she took out a toy camera from her pocket.
I wonder if Mom would like a picture of a flower.
Hope took out his own toy camera. The cameras would send data automatically and were an absolute must for events like these. Compared to normal cameras, the toy camera only had a little bit of space for data. Once you filled up all of the memory on the camera, the data would be sent automatically to the nearest computer terminal. Then, within the same day, the paper photos are sent to your house. The camera itself is cheap and meant to be used and thrown away, so it's perfect for children who might drop it or break it. And being able to use up all the space on the camera in a day makes it even better. Hope aimed his camera at the pale red flower. He also took a picture of the white flower next to it, its thin petals scattered in the breeze. He took a picture of that too. I hope the pictures come out, he thought. There were flowers here that you'd never see in the city, and not just flowers. The monster he could see in the distance just added to Sunleth's charm. Hope was in a trance, clicking picture after picture. He hardly even noticed climbing up the hill.
Hey, don't you think the air here has a sort of strange smell?
Alita said to him. Hope had been noticing it too, once they left the lakeside and started walking through the pass. He had smelled it then.
It smells like ick, medicine.
Kai sniffed the air and grimaced.
No, not like medicine. More like herbs? Yeah, it's kind of like the stuff Gramps drinks.
Probably hearing their conversation, the female researcher in front of them turned and smiled.
That's the smell of green stuff, of dirt and grass.
All the children in the area exchanged glances. They had dirt in the city. They had flower pots and other plants that grew out of the ground. They had never smelled anything like this.
Untreated and unpurified dirt smells like this, and the plants that grow in it.
Come to think of it, Hope thought, the flowers smelled different too. Not really different, just stronger. He had gotten just close enough to take a picture of them, but the sweet smell of the flowers had reached him. It had surprised him. He wondered if that was because of the dirt here.
Look, a monster!
Someone yelled. When he looked, he saw something crawling along the edge of a ravine. It was translucent and squishy looking. What a strange monster.
That's a Flandragora. The improved breed is edible, you know.
Everyone raised their voices in shock and disbelief.
I don't think I'll tell you what it gets processed into. It would be so much trouble if some kids got disgusted and wouldn't eat it anymore.
She winked jokingly. Their field trip was about to degrade into a discussion on what kind of food a Flandragora could possibly be when they reached the sun-dappled trail. The researcher probably had that planned from the beginning when she started talking about edible Flandragoras. When they reached the top of the pass, the view there erased all thoughts of monsters. A rainbow arched in the sky, and light shone down through cracks in the clouds. He heard the click of someone's camera. They must have just remembered they had one. That was the signal. Everyone grabbed their cameras and hurried to take a picture of the scene before them.
There are lots of beautiful places, so remember to save some space on your cameras.
On those words, the sound of clicking stopped. Hope just barely managed to stop himself. He'd almost used all of his space up.
If only I could have brought another camera, Alita said sadly.
Probably everyone was thinking the same thing, but the rule was that they could have only one camera per person.
Alright everyone, look over here please.
The researcher was speaking through her megaphone. She must have waited until everyone was finished taking pictures to start her speech.
As everyone already knows, the weather in Cocoon is controlled by the Foul Sea. As a general rule, the Foul Sea do not tell humans what the weather schedule is going to be.
But there are exceptions. For storms, lightning, strong wind, and other bad weather, the Foul Sea sends notices to the Sanctum, and the Sanctum warns the citizens so they can prepare. The announcements from the Foul Sea are always correct. They never miss. Compare this to the so-called weather forecast, where humans gather data on weather climate changes. They are usually quite accurate, but are still nothing but predictions and can occasionally be wrong.
Unlike the rest of Cocoon, the weather in Sunleth is controlled by its own Foul Sea. This is because we are studying the effect rain, wind, and other weather has on the plants and monsters.
Alita raised her hand, wanting to ask a question.
Are there any monsters that dislike rain?
Alita hates rain. That's probably why she thought of that question.
Of course there are, but there are also monsters that love the rain too.
Alita made a face. She looked as though she wished she hadn't asked. Hope and Kai both had to stifle a laugh.
It's not on our tour today, but beyond that cliff there is a valley where we are keeping monsters that love rain and monsters that hate it. We are controlling the rain in that area and checking to see how the monsters react. That is also why you will often see a rainbow from this pass.
Didn't Dad say that it was light refracting off of water particles in the air that made rainbows? Hope thought to himself. I should ask him about the edible Flandragoras. He'd know.
Alright, let's head off to the next area. Up ahead is a place called the Tree-Shaded Path. There are a lot of unusual sunlight-hating plants growing there, but it's very slippery, so be careful when you take pictures. That is all, the researcher said, flipping the switch on her microphone.
They formed a line again and continued on down the path. The road from the lakeside to the top of Sundapple Trail had been a hill, but now it was a gentle slope downward. Despite that, it was more difficult to walk on. Hope had never known how slippery wet grass and dirt could be. The path was flat, with no rocks, but he nearly fell many times. When he finally did fall, he was covered in dirt. The information he had received about the field trip had said, bring shoes that are easy to walk in, and clothes that you don't mind getting dirty. Now he knew what that meant. Looking around, he was glad he still had some space left on his toy camera. He forgot his fatigue as he snapped pictures of the soft light hitting the rocks, and of the grass as transparent as crystal. When they came to the end of the path, Hope took one last picture. The light indicating that the data was being sent blinked and then switched off. Now it was nothing but an empty box. As he stuffed it in his pocket, he felt disappointed. Now he had nothing to do. Though it was the same path back, it seemed to become more difficult to walk on. His footsteps felt heavy.
Can we go home now? Hope said, complaining a little. Seriously, Alita said, out of breath. But once we get back to Lake Serah, we'll have free time.
Kai was the only one who seemed full of energy. Apparently falling down didn't bother him. His hands and clothes were covered in dirt.
Kai, you need to be more careful. What if you hurt yourself?
He said he was fine, but quickly fell on his backside. Unfazed, he jumped up and continued walking.
If he says he's fine, then he's fine,
Alita said, sighing. After eating lunch and resting a bit, Hope felt his fatigue completely disappear. When he had returned to the lake shore, he had thought he would never want to move again.
What should we do? We still have lots of time.
Here they could run and yell all they wanted, and they wouldn't get in trouble for it.
Let's climb that big tree over there. I want to take a picture from the top. You haven't finished taking all of your pictures yet, Kai? You usually take them all at once,
Alita said, surprised. Hope could sense something bad happening. He tried to stop them before something happened.
We can't climb the trees or rocks. If you climbed that tree and fell, you'd die.
Neither Kai nor Alita would be able to think about other things when they were excited about something. It was always up to Hope to try and stop them.
So how would you climb it? I don't think you can. But I promised Hal. I told him I would take a really cool picture for him.
Oh yeah, that's right, Hope thought. Hal had wanted to come on this trip, but Hal wasn't even in school yet. Kai had spent a long time trying to calm him down, trying to think of something to make up for him not being able to go. That's probably why he had promised to take a cool picture.
Then why didn't you take one on top of the sun-dappled trail? I did, but it didn't seem enough. I took pictures of monsters too, but it didn't seem quite cool enough, you know? So for my last picture, I want to take it from the top of that tree. But you can't. Not that tree. You never know until you try, Kai said, putting his hand in his pocket. He frowned. What's wrong? Kai said nothing, checking his pocket on the other side. Hope felt relieved. What? You didn't drop your camera, did you? He looked in his coat pocket and in his bag. After looking everywhere he could, he finally gave up. Hope and Alita could tell what had happened just by looking at his face. Well, I'm sure it fell around here somewhere, Hope said. It has to be, everyone agreed. So they looked around the area, but came up with nothing. Did you drop it on the path? You did keep falling over. Alita pointed to his dirty knees. No, I had it with me when we came back. I was trying to decide whether or not to take a picture on the pass. I know I had it with me then. So it had to be somewhere between the Sun-Dappled Trail and the lakeside, but they couldn't get there anymore. When they came back, the path was closed off again. The researchers wanted to keep outside interferences to a minimum. Hey Hope, does your camera have any space left on it? Usually Hope would end up lending him his camera. Kai and Alita would always take pictures twice as fast as Hope would and use up all their space. Hope thought that they should think a little bit more about the pictures they take, but when he told them that, they just said that he thought too much. In the end, his camera would end up having pictures from all three of them. But today was different. Sorry, the data already sent. It was impossible to think too much about taking pictures here. The scenery in the Sunleth waterscape was so beautiful. That made it even stranger that Kai wouldn't have finished taking pictures. Me too. I used it all on the Sun-Dappled Trail, Alita said. Kai sighed. Guess that's that then. Don't worry, I'll show Hal my pictures too. Alita tried to make him feel better. Hope will show him his pictures too. That should be okay, right? He'll see double the pictures. I'm sure he'll be happy with that. But the pictures would be arriving at their houses tonight. Hal would only get to see them tomorrow, after school. Hope thought of Hal. The four of them usually played together after school. It upset him that he would be the only one not going. He kept saying, Why can't I go? Hal would be so disappointed. No, they had to do it. They had to do it for Hal. Let's go look for it. Kai and Alita both looked surprised. It's not that far to the Sun-Dappled Trail. We'll just look around until free time is over. But we're not supposed to go on the path. It's okay. We'll just have to sneak in. They glanced at each other. They never thought Hope would say anything like this. My dad said you should never break a promise, no matter how small. He had also said that even if you've forgotten a promise, the other person will remember it. Kai could just say that it couldn't be helped and be done with it, but Hal would have been waiting excitedly all day for those pictures. Let's go look for it, he said again. Even though Hal wasn't his age, he was a friend. Alita seemed to feel the same. Yeah, we don't want Hal to be disappointed. It was decided. Chapter 4. They couldn't go through the entrance to the main path. Researchers had begun their cleanup of the area. They decided to take a side path. Whether it really was a side path or not, they couldn't tell, but it looked like one. We'll get there if we go this way, right? Alita turned back, sounding worried. Well, the direction is right. If we keep going this way, we should find the main path. They were only a short distance away from the shore, but the sounds of their classmates seemed terribly far away. Hope thought that maybe this wasn't the right way after all. When we go back, we should take the main path. But if they catch us at the entrance, they'll get angry at us. Don't worry, by then they'll be finished cleaning up. But the teachers might be watching. The forest around them was too quiet, so they felt they had to talk loudly about stupid things. When they were in a large group of people, it didn't seem so bad. But now that it was just the three of them, the quiet was frightening. Hey, look at that! It looks like some sort of fruit, Alita said brightly. She pointed up to a branch that was bent under the weight of several yellowish-red fruits. It was larger than any fruit they had ever seen in the store. I wonder if it's okay to eat. You can't pick them. Really, Alita, you'll grab just about anything. I do not. Well, it is a very pretty color. I said it's not like that. Alita was getting angry. Hey, guys, Kai cut into their argument. Don't you think that color looks familiar? You know, the thing she said was edible? Then Hope noticed it too. That monster that they had seen near the Sun-Dappled Trail. It had a very similar color. Hope remembered that it hadn't been too far away from the main path. Then the earth rose up in front of them, like a red wall. It was that monster. Its red, translucent body swelled. A Flandragora, Hope thought, scared. His feet took off running before he realized it. Ah! It's following us! Alita screamed, nearly in tears. It was the slowest of the three, and there was no time to look back. He just ran, moving his legs as hard as he could. If they left him behind, it would be all over for him. He ran as long as his breath held out.
He couldn't tell where they were running. They found a rock that they could hide behind, and dove into its protective shadow. His heart was hard. He felt as though it would jump out of its mouth.
It's not...
Kyle looked out from behind the bolt, then sat down in relief. Felt his legs grow weak. He couldn't run another step. The three of them sat, breathing heavily. Hope felt a chill run down his body. If the ground had been slippery like it had been on the main path, or if one of them had tripped over something, who knows what might have happened. They were lucky the three of them managed to get away.
Hey, where are we?
They had thought they were walking along the main path. If it was the wrong direction, they could have just turned back and gone a different way. But they couldn't now.
This place seems a little... different.
The gloomy trees that had surrounded them before were gone, and bare cliffs rose up on either side. The grass at their feet was sparse. It was a dry and desolate place.
Which way did we come from?
They had been so intent on getting behind the boulder that they hadn't even noticed which way they had ran. All they could see now were rocks and cliffs going in all directions.
Well, the path should be in whatever direction the rainbows are.
But the cliffs blocked their view. They could barely see the sky, let alone rainbows.
I think it's this way. No, it's this way.
Kai and Alita pointed in completely opposite directions. Hope couldn't tell which of them might be right. They really had no idea which direction was which anymore.
Well, let's just keep walking then. But you aren't supposed to go anywhere if you get lost. Maybe in other places, but what if another monster attacks? We wouldn't be able to run away.
The path here was craggy and uneven. There would be nothing they could do if they were attacked by a fast monster.
If we find a place where we can see everything, we should be able to see the lake. Then we'll know how to get back. Right, we've just gotten a little bit off the path. If we could see the lake, it would all work out.
Kai agreed. Alita slowly nodded, still unconvinced.
Oh yeah, wait just a minute.
Hope grabbed a sharp rock and carved an X into the boulder.
Let's go right. If we're wrong, we can always come back here. Then we can try going left. Wow, Hope, you're so smart. My dad taught me. He said if you're lost in a place you don't know, make sure you know how to get back to where you were. Well then, your dad is smart,
Alita laughed. Complimenting his dad made Hope feel happier than if she had complimented himself.
Let's hurry. They'll probably be leaving soon.
The three of them nodded and started off together. Even though it was noon, the light in the narrow passage between the cliffs was dim. They walked without a sound. They were worried that their voices might carry to any monsters within earshot. Without anyone saying so, the three of them held the hands. It made them feel stronger somehow, walking along a path they didn't know. Parts of the cliff face glittered with blue. If they hadn't been lost, they would have thought the pale light beautiful. But now, even that light seemed ominous. The air was warm, and a tepid wind blew through the crevice. Hope didn't know how far they had walked. The cliff face continued unfalteringly on either side. Then in the distance they saw something that looked like a machine. They looked at each other, nodding, and broke into a run. They thought they might be able to use it to send data or to call out to someone. If it was anything like the ones they had at home, they would be able to contact their teachers. But as they closed in on it, they could see it was nothing like a household machine. It didn't look like something children could use.
Let's just try pushing buttons.
We shouldn't. What if we broke it? But before Hope could stop her, Alita touched the panel. It lit up.
See, we can figure this out,
Alita said proudly. As soon as she said that, the light on the panel went out again and the machine grew quiet.
Huh? That doesn't work? Oh well, I guess I'll just try doing it the way Mom taught me.
Alita made a fist. Hope and Kai grabbed her arms on either side. Both of them knew what doing it Mom's way entailed.
No way! If you do that, it will break. Only your mom can make things work by hitting them.
Alita looked unhappy but relaxed her hands.
Well then, what should we do? Let's walk a bit further. If there's a machine here, then that means people should be close by.
The path was still difficult, uneven and rocky, but the hope that there was someone nearby gave them the energy to go on.
Hey, what do you think this is?
They had just came out on the other side of a tunnel when Hope saw a strange thing floating just in front of his face. It was a glowing ball just about the size of a human head. It looked as though it were made of water, and it wobbled in the air in front of them.
Well, it's not a monster. It isn't attacking us. We've told you not to touch things!
Hope and Kai screamed together, but they were too late. Alita touched the glowing ball with her palm. The wind grew cold, and the sky grew dark. Droplets of water fell down on them, and then in a rush it changed to a whole downpour of rain. Now they knew what that ball was. It was a rain control device. They ran underneath the tunnel. It was the only place they could escape from the rain.
Well, at least now we know which direction we're going. They said there was some rain thing nearby the Sun-Dappled Trail, right? So we know that the pass is just on the other side of these cliffs. That's nice and all, but what do we do about this rain?
Hope was going to stop the two of them from arguing, but then he remembered. When they were on the Sun-Dappled Trail, the thing the researcher had been talking about.
There are monsters that love the rain too, and this place is meant for studying those monsters. I have to stop the rain, Hope thought, and he ran out from underneath the rocks. But that was as far as he got. He stopped, then stepped back a pace. Right in front of him was a yellow, frog-looking monster. Behind it were more of the same in various colors. They had sharp claws at the ends of their webbed forelegs. His whole body grew cold looking at them. He tried to run, but tripped over his own feet, landing on his back. He knew he had to run, but he couldn't make himself stand. Behind him, he heard a scream. There were monsters near Alita, too. She was the loudest person in class, and her scream was ear-splitting. Hope thought somewhere in the back of his mind that maybe it would surprise the monsters and they'd run. For a moment the monsters stopped moving, but no monster would ever run at the scream of a child. They started creeping closer. He could see sharp teeth in their open mouths. They're going to eat me, he thought. Hope squeezed his eyes shut and curled into a ball, but an attack from the sharp teeth and nails never came. Shaking, he slowly opened his eyes. The rain had stopped. The monsters were slowly moving away. Someone used the rain control device and stopped the rain. The Foul Sea here controls the rain. Perhaps it was the Foul Sea who had saved them. He then heard Alita scream. Look, it's the airship! Kai yelled. They could see the airship through the crack in the cliffs. Maybe it was searching for them. It was stopped in midair, hovering. The Foul Sea must have called the airship, too, Hope thought. Kai dashed out from underneath the rock, waving his hands in the air and yelling. Can you stand? Alita grabbed his hand and helped him stand. He looked around, but didn't see any researchers or anything that might be a Foul Sea. Hope, hurry! He nodded and ran after Kai and Alita, waving his hands and yelling at the airship. Once they were on the ship, they were taken to a separate room and questioned about what had happened. They got a lecture from their teacher about how the monsters they ran into in the Sunleth waterscape could have hurt them. They hadn't expected anything less. Now that they were back on the ship, Kai miraculously had his toy camera returned to him. A researcher had found it when they were doing their cleanup of the path, and brought it back to the airship. They hadn't needed to go looking for it after all. They should have just waited until free time was over. I never should have said we should go looking for it, Hope thought, feeling regret. He didn't know what Kai and Alita were thinking, but they didn't seem angry with him. Did the Foul Sea stop the rain? Alita asked her teacher. She must have had the same thought that Hope had. The Foul Sea is the only one who could have stopped the rain like that. It was probably a researcher who controlled it from somewhere far away, but most likely it was a Foul Sea who made the decision to stop the rain generator. It wasn't the Foul Sea who called the airship either. It was the panel that Alita had touched. A researcher had noticed some strange activity coming from a machine in this area, and realized that someone had intruded into Rain-Spotted Valley. They said that it isn't really difficult to land there. If the pilot wasn't so good, you probably would have still been wandering around lost in that canyon. We should go and thank the pilot later. Finally, they were allowed to go back to their seats. Kai, Sorry I got us in trouble, Hope wanted to say. That was really cool, Kai laughed, slapping Hope on the back. Hope nodded back and smiled. Kai, take out your camera, Alita pointed out the window. It was already evening. Many points of light were scattered below them in the fading sunlight. It was the lights of the Sunleth waterscape's airship runway. Kai hurried to take the picture. Finally, all the space on the camera was used up, and the light indicating that the data was sending came on. The picture that Kai had promised to take for Hal, that final picture, was a night view of the Sunleth waterscape. Chapter 5. No matter how small the promise, you shouldn't break it. Huh. Hope reflected on the words the memory brought. I believed in those words, he thought. I always believed in them. Then even my father, the very man who taught them to me, forgot them. No, his father probably still follows him to the letter, just not when it concerns Hope or his mother. If it's his work, he'll go running, any time, day or night. He'll even forget to eat, locked away in his study. The way his father is now, nothing is more important. Nothing takes more precedence than work. His father no longer remembered promises made with his family. He didn't even listen to them anymore. When was the last time Hope bothered to start a conversation with him? A long time ago. What did I want to talk about, he wondered. I've even forgotten what it was. His father had said, Sorry, I can't now. We can talk about it later. Now the only thing Hope could remember was how his father had just brushed him aside. He remembered it as if it were yesterday. When his father had left, he finally realized something. It didn't matter what he expected, what he'd hoped for. But there was nothing he could do. It's too bad everything was closed off, but at least we were able to see Foul Sea Kujata. His mother's words brought him back to himself. They had just seen the Foul Sea of the energy plant, and were heading back to the entrance. He couldn't make peace with his thoughts, but looked away in feigned disinterest. This trip seemed too short. Half of the plant was closed off. It really couldn't be helped, you know. The accident that happened at Euride was far more serious than the reports had led on. You could tell just by coming here. I wonder if the Falsey and the Sunleth waterscape was like that one. Oh right, that nature field trip. You didn't meet the Falsey? Nope, they told us about how it controls the weather, but the only thing we saw were monsters. Oh yes, I remember. You were attacked by those monsters and got a fever. I was so worried. Maybe it was because he had encountered monsters twice during his time at Sunleth, but on their trip home, Hope had suddenly fallen ill with a fever. Once they reached Palenpolum, he was immediately taken to the emergency room. Because that happened, he never got to thank the pilot of the airship. He had heard about it from Kai and Alita 3 days later. He was super cool. He was this old guy who had hair like a bird's nest. He said his son was born just a little while ago. When I told him I wanted to become a pilot, he said, "Good luck." Kai couldn't stop talking about the pilot of the airship. After that, Kai never wavered in his dream to become a pilot. It made Hope a little jealous. Even Alita had a dream for what she wanted to do in the future. She said she wanted to become a singer, so she entered into an all-girls school that had a special music program. That was a year ago. When I was younger, I wanted to become like my father. Of course, now, his father is an example of the kind of person he didn't want to become. No matter what kind of job he worked at, he didn't want to become the kind of person who will ignore those who are close to him. He would be happy so long as he never became the kind of person who would forget even the tiniest promise. Right? What? Sorry, I wasn't listening. He resolved to stop thinking so much and actually listen. Not listening to people when they talk would be exactly what his father would do. The people just passing by were just saying that during the accident, a little boy was hurt very badly. They said it was so sad that they couldn't even look at his father, who was with them. I see. I hope he doesn't die. There's nothing sadder than when a child dies before their parent. It doesn't matter whether the parent or the child goes first, Hope thought. When a family member dies, it's still sad, for those who are left behind. But Hope didn't say so. Somehow, he couldn't say it. Hope? Are you mad at your father? Not really. He's just not really all that good at these sorts of things, you know. But the sanctum places a lot of trust in him, so he doesn't want to do a bad job. When he looked at his mother's face, he felt the tight feeling in his chest relax. I'm not mad. He'll be here for the fireworks festival, right? Well then, that's okay. I mean, the fireworks are the main event after all. His mother's smile looked so happy. Maybe I should try talking with my father on the night of the festival, Hope thought. Of course he'll just say, "How have you been?" or something like that. But if he could just see his mother smile like this, he didn't care. A masked soldier walked in front of them. The repairs after the accident should have already been complete, and the usual soldiers at the plant were the Guardian Corps. Why were there so many PSICOM soldiers around? He felt like some strange, awful thing was crawling up his legs. His mother had a worried look on her face as they got closer to the plaza. Hope tried to make his voice bright and airy. Come on, let's go back to Bodhum. We already saw that Falsey. Maybe his mother also wanted to shake off that strange feeling that he had felt, because she replied in the same bright tone. Okay, then let's go to the shopping mall. Again? He didn't want to think any more about soldiers in the Falsey. He just wanted to think about having fun. Maybe when I return to Palenpolum, I'll talk to Kai and Alita, Hope thought. If I tell him I saw a ton of soldiers in Euride, Kai is sure to come running. Alita will probably want to hear more about the fireworks festival than the plant. It'll be 3 years since we've been together, Hope thought, thinking of his friends. His school vacation had only just begun.